Welcome to Watch Symposium. I'm Austin. And we've been talking a lot about the no date sub. I've made quite a few videos about it, and I'm not quite done talking about that watch. I want to talk about the overhaul I had on it and some other aspects, but I think it's kind of time to move on for the time being and maybe come back to that watch a little bit later. Let's talk about Rolex number 2, okay? And let me set the scene. It was 2015, early 2015. Had the Orient Blue Mako, and I had the no date sub. I was pretty much wearing the no date sub 98% of the time. And, I was wearing the Orient occasionally. I still liked it. And, you kind of look at these watches like living things. And I hated the idea of it, sitting in some dusty drawer, unwound, unloved, forgotten about. So I'd try to use it every now and then just to keep it wound. And I imagine it was pretty traumatic when the Rolex showed up for it, so I felt like I had to let it down gently. So I think it appreciated that. But about 98% of the time, if not more, I was wearing the no date sub. And before I bought the no date sub, I told myself that I was just going to be a one watch guy. I just wanted one good watch, pretty much to last me the rest of my life, and it was going to be the no date sub. And what happened? Why did I decide to get another watch and another high end watch? Well, I think when a person decides to get another watch, and by the way, if you're into this, if you're into watches, I was going to call it a hobby, but I really don't consider this a hobby. I consider other things hobbies, but this is just an interest of mine, okay? I'm just a guy that likes watches, right? I wouldn't even consider myself a collector. But I think if you love watches, it's tough to have just one watch. And I think you might be better off having more than one watch, and I'll talk about that in a little while. But I think there are good reasons to get more watches, and there are bad reasons, or sort of not so much reasons but excuses. And so let's talk about some of the reasons, good and bad, and maybe some of the excuses I was telling myself to justify getting another Rolex. And some of the silly reasons were things like the no date sub didn't have a date, and you gotta have a date, right? I think that was kind of an excuse. The no date sub had a tritium dial. I couldn't, if it got dark sometime, I wouldn't be able to see the time. I have to have a Luminova Rolex, right? Again, more on the excuse scale, I think. I don't think that quite justifies as a reason, or at least a good reason to buy a expensive watch. Incidentally, about the tritium dial, that's over a 20-year-old watch, and the tritium actually still faintly glows. I didn't know that for months, and if you turn off the lights, you wouldn't notice it. Your eyes haven't adjusted enough, and if you were to wait around 10 minutes, you'd notice that you can tell the time perfectly. So, the tritium is kicking, so I'm kind of surprised about that. Anyway, back to what I was saying. So those were sort of some just excuses, I think, sort of trying to justify this purchase. And getting towards more of the better reasons, another thing I was telling myself, and I think this is somewhat legitimate, is I was planning to have an overhaul on the no date sub, and I was thinking, what am I going to do for that month? Of course, the Orient was waiting, probably begging me to just rely on it, but I was so into Rolex at the time. I couldn't really imagine not going back to the Orient. I think when you get into this hobby, I think there's sort of a period, and I think a lot of hobbies are like this, where you educate yourself just enough to become a bit of a maniac, rejecting things that you think, maybe watches that aren't good enough, or saying, I'm only gonna strap Rolex on, or I'm never gonna wear another watch besides Rolex, or just becoming really snobby in a way. And at the time, I remember thinking, there are 365 days in a year, and do I really want to waste it on, $160 watch, something that I don't look at and just feel like immense pride, something that doesn't just turn me on. And I mean, there's something to be safe for that. There's something to be said for that. I mean, there's 365 days a year, and if you want to waste it on garbage watches, you're wasting your time, right? You're wasting your time, and so that's not to say you can't branch out, you can't wear what you want to wear, but life's too short to wear crappy watches, and that's where I was, and so the idea of you know a month without a Rolex felt like like I was sort of backsliding somewhat. So that was a big justification. I thought, yeah, I mean, watches are kind of like cars. When one's in the shop, you need a backup, right? Two cars to rely on, and there's something to be said for that, I think. And so you're getting kind of into legitimate excuse territory, and then I think probably the best reason was that if you have one watch, I don't think you appreciate it as much if it's always on your wrist. Okay, there's a great saying. Okay, and it's like it goes something like this: show me a beautiful woman, and I'll show you a guy who's tired of fucking her. Okay, so I probably don't need to explain that, but I will, just to humor the people that may need the explanation. It means basically, no matter how good or beautiful something is, you get tired of it. Just things become mundane if you don't step away. If routine kind of gets you into this rut, and watches are like that, every day, every day, every day, no matter how good your watch is, how much you like it, how beautiful you think it is, day in and day out, it's going to become routine, and you're going to appreciate it less. And I think that's a good reason to have another watch, and I think that's probably the best reason to have at least one more watch. And what's the perfect watch collection? I'll probably make a video about that in the future, but I definitely don't think it's one watch. I think two minimum. But again, if the number gets too high, then you really, I think, have a hard time rotating the watches, and you have you tend not to know the idiosyncrasies of the watch. How accurate it is or whatnot, and so I think there's a good balance. And I'll probably make a video about that in the future, but I think at least two watches is minimum, and it's because you appreciate both watches more than if you just had one. So after wearing the no date sub constantly, I just thought, yeah, I'd just like to have something to change it with. I found myself looking at the Orient and sort of just respecting it a bit more, just because it seemed, a little bit special, because I never wore it, and it just made it look a little bit more unique. And I realized that the sort of those two watches were sort of, as little wrist time as the Orient was getting, they were sort of playing off each other and helping me to appreciate both of them. And so I thought, that's a great reason to get another Rolex, And so, what Rolex to get? Well, what was I looking for? Well, I've got a sort of my idea of a Rolex sweet spot, and I'm going to make a video about that in the future as well. But let's talk about what model I wanted. And well, when I was a kid, the first Rolex that I ever laid eyes on was a Pepsi GMT, and so that's sort of a grailish watch for me. Okay, it's a bit of a grail for me, and and so I was thinking that might be the way to go, but a couple reasons existed that sort of made me have second thoughts about getting a GMT or a GMT Master 2. And here's what they were. The first one was that, okay, they're pretty expensive. Okay, the prices of those are pretty high. That was a factor. Okay. The other factor was the color of the dial. Okay, so I had a no date sub. That's a black dial. The GMT Master 2, that's a black dial. They look a lot alike. You've got the bezel difference and you got the date on one, but for non-watch people, I don't really think that they may be able to tell the difference between those two watches. And again, the bezel color is probably the biggest difference. But I tell you, if you took a GMT with a black bezel, had the date on it, even if it had the date on it, and you were to give me that, and my wife wouldn't even notice. My wife would have no clue that I'm wearing a different watch. Even the bezel color, I don't think she pays attention to watches enough to even notice that. So I guess the sameness of the dials sort of gave me second thoughts about going towards a GMT, even though it was a bit of a grail for me. I thought, yeah, I mean, I need something different, okay? And I love the fact that GMTs had that 24-hour hand. I live in Japan, so having access to 2 time zones would be great. I could set one to back in the States where my folks live, and then one here. So pretty much that was a GMT function watch. Was something I was very much considering, and so didn't want a black dial, wanted a GMT function watch, wanted a Rolex. Can you see where I'm going with this? Any guesses? What would be a good complement to the black dialed no date sub? The Explorer 2. That's right. So that's what I decided to get. I got the Explorer 2, and those are really reasonably priced. That's another reason that sort of led me in that direction. So here it is, the Explorer 2 Polar. This is 2002. This is a Y version, and in terms of a Rolex sweet spot, Ys, Ks, they're great. And it's upside down. And I'll make a video about why this particular Explorer 2 is, to me, the best of the best. Okay, in the future I'll make that. But yeah, here it is, the Explorer 2, and yeah, I'll make some more videos about this. But yeah, so enter the second Rolex, and yeah, I mean, just having the white dial and the black dial, it just, I mean, they felt really different, and not just from the casual observer, but to me, I mean, just completely different flavor than one another. So yeah, that's where we are. Okay, thanks for watching. Take care. See you next time.